Buenos días, buenas tardes, buenas noches, bonjour, bonsoir, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night, wherever you may be. Jay Slater case. And just a brief video, if I may, on a subject that's always bothered me, still bothers me, and it bothers me to the extent that it has to be repeated because those that assumed I think the wrong thing got us on the wrong track. And it's, of course, the phone usage, the use of Jay Slater's phone. Now, I got rethinking for the umpteenth time on this subject because of another case that I've been following somewhat, not in any great depth. I think Wax has covered it and mainstream media's covered it. And it's of the Scottish lady Elizabeth Ross, who was killed in Greece and her body found in a suitcase. That aspect of the crime, really not that interested in, horrific though it is. It's the phone aspect, because it turns out the suspect in this case then took possession of Elizabeth Ross's phone when she was already dead and was communicating with it, and on her Facebook page too, posing as Elizabeth Ross. And what caught my ear was sending text messages via Elizabeth's phone to her parents back in Scotland and telling them things like she wanted some, I don't know, the exact, words, something like breathing space, some time to herself, some time off, etc., etc. And what made me think this is interesting and connected to the Jay Slater case is it would seem that Elizabeth Ross's parents back in Scotland took those messages that they received from the suspected killer to be words from Elizabeth Ross herself. In other words, the parents of the child, and Elizabeth Ross is, grown lady. You would have thought the parents back in Scotland would possibly be able to have spotted something awry with these messages coming through the phone system, but apparently not. And I believe Elizabeth Ross's father is a lawyer or a judge. I'm not sure, but someone of great learning and someone presumably that is well accustomed to how Elizabeth Ross writes. And yet this Afghan refugee, the suspect, it would seem, was able to convince the parents back in Scotland that the person writing all this was Elizabeth Ross. In other words, my idea here is that it doesn't need to be someone very close to the victim, or even someone that knows the victim very well, or even someone that is fluent in English and able to imitate perfectly the writing style of a son or a daughter victim. It seems, in this case, almost anyone could send that text and it would appear as convincing, yeah, a convincing text from the victim to the parents. And I guess it's because the parents are in that frame of mind when they see a text come through from the phone number they associate with their daughter. Why would they think otherwise? Now, if we relate it back to the J Slater case, same thing. Same thing. If you see a message coming through the number that is Jay's phone number, that is Jay's identity, this is Jay's device, why would you think that it could be a message sent by another person? You wouldn't. Unless you had the feeling some other person had taken possession of Jay's phone. And this is the point I want to make, is that it seems like, I'm not a phone person, as you all know, but it seems like it is relatively easy to use someone else's phone, throw out a few messages posing as that person, and for the rest of the world to assume that those messages must be from you, that they are genuine. The Elizabeth Ross case shows us that that is a terrible assumption to make. It is the wrong assumption to make. If you're going on pure logic, all you can say is that message, those words that have come from that device, would appear to be from the owner of the device, but there's no reason to assume that is true. And the same with the Jay Slater case. We have references over and over again to these video calls and these text messages, and the assumption is that must be Jay sending those or receiving those calls, messages, etc. But why? Why is that assumption out there? because that's what normally happens. But Jay Slater wasn't in, just like Elizabeth Ross wasn't in, a normal situation. Both Elizabeth Ross and Jay Slater were in extraordinary situations where I would submit there is crime in the background. Now, just out of curiosity, I've done this before, but just to please the people that love using AI, I wanted to know, how common is it that a person's device is located at a particular scene, let's say a scene of a crime, but the owner of that device is nowhere near the scene, the place where the phone is. They're not connected at all. Device here, owner of device here. People think this device here means this person, this owner must be in the same place, but how often is that not the case? Well, let's have a quick look at what AI says. I won't read the whole thing out, but the question I typed in, is it common for a phone to be located at the scene of a crime but not the phone's owner? And AI comes back with, yes, it is common for a phone to be found at a crime scene without its owner. Now, I know the assumption behind the question is there's a crime involved here, but bear with me for the sake of argument. Let us assume that somehow crime is involved. And I would suggest that another person using a victim's device is a crime, but let's just go with what I've put in there. AI says, yes, it is common for a phone to be found at a crime scene without its owner. This happens in many real police cases, and it gives you a list of how that can happen. And some of them are accidental, of course. For example, it says why it happens. Accidental drops. A person runs away and drops the phone without noticing. I mean, is that possible in the Jay Slater case? Jay ran away from something, dropped his phone, and someone picked it up and they started using it. Possible. It's not a likely scenario in my book, but it's possible. Accidental drop of phone. Theft or robbery. A thief steals a phone and drops it, or drops their own phone during the crime. Now, all I can say is, given the state that we saw Jay in Papagayos, would it surprise me that Jay dropped his phone? No. Would it surprise me that someone else in Papagayos picked it up? No. Would it surprise me that someone picked it up in Papagayos and started using it? No. Would it surprise me that someone in Papagayos picked it up, started using it, and posed as Jay? Ha ha, this could be funny. No. But you make your own minds up. Then we have the staged scene. Someone puts another person's phone at a location on purpose to frame them. Well, if you go along with the theory that Jay was framed, in the sense that let's make Jay look stupid enough to have caused his own death by stumbling through a ravine, then this kind of makes sense. In order to convince the world he must have died by accident, we've got to make him look stupid. In order to make him look stupid, we've got to get his phone up into a place and convince the world that he's up there too, and then that might appear to be convincing. And this is where we get the likes of Chris Pennington say, we only followed the facts, and his phone was up here, therefore he must have been up here. But of course not. Just if, it's a big if, but let's go with the if this is a staged scene, that Jay's in this ravine, stumbling around, half dead, cut by a cactus, that staged scene, then it makes perfect sense that someone would have put that phone up there, someone would have manipulated the phone in that area to make the staged scene. Of course. Doesn't mean it happened, but that's not the point. It doesn't mean it didn't happen. And if we don't know that that didn't happen, why is everyone going searching for a guy up in an area they don't know where he was? They only know the phone pinged there. You see, it gets back to the whole Chris Pennington thing. Oh, if you weren't up here searching, you weren't helping. I'd turn that around. You ain't helping if you're searching in an area where the boy never went. How is that helping? In fact, I would say that's distracting people from what actually happened to Jay. You're up there saying, well, I've got no evidence he's here. I'm going to go searching here. If you don't search with me in a place there's no evidence where the boy was, you're not helping. It's the other way around. You ain't helping anyone if you're searching where a boy never went. End of. Borrowing or sharing. A friend or family member has the phone when the event happens. There we go. A family member or a friend has the phone when the event happens. And I would submit that one could fit the bill here with Jay Slater, because I do believe, I have heard, that in the narco underworld, various phones are used, and it is fairly common for someone else's phone to be used for a particular purpose related to the business going on. So in that sense, let's say, just for example, speculation, Lucy is doing some kind of deal, but using Jay's phone and using Jay's bank details. That is an example of someone borrowing with consent of the owner the phone, but it does open up the possibility that that third party, that other person, can start using your phone, which is effectively your identity, and posing as you. It's all possible. So then I get back to, why is it that I feel very strongly, not convinced, but close to convinced, that Jay is not using his own phone? And it's based on what we do not see. Again, it's this absence of something that should be there, surely should be there. In his final hours, we are told that Jay is in trouble. He goes off the road, bitten by a cactus, lying in a ditch, but he still has 1 or 2% left on that phone. He's in a bad way, we were told. Up to the point of, listen, I'm not going to make it. He's in a bad way. And it does strike me as very, very strange that there is no phone call, there is no communication at any point during this really desperate state that Jay finds himself in to his mother. We're told they had a special bond. We're told that, they had this connection that was beyond normal, you could say, for mother and son. And yet, there is not one message, not one word, nothing goes from Jay to his mother. Even the listen, I'm not going to make it is not, listen, I'm not going to make it, mother. You find that strange? I bet Debbie finds that strange too when she thinks about it. Her son was in a desperate state, about to die. But the person he decides for that last message is his drinking buddy back in Los Cristianos, not the mother. And not only that, not only is there nothing going to the mother, there's nothing going to the dad either. It's not as if the connection to mum's phone didn't work. You'd have thought if an attempt had been made for Jay just to say a few words to his mum that fateful morning, and it didn't go through, he'd say something to his dad, Warren. And you would have thought if that text or call or message didn't work, you'd have thought he would try someone else he knew. We've also got his stepdad, who knew him many years, Andy Watson. Hey, Andy, can you just tell Mum I'm in a bad way here? Could she not call some of my friends or emergency services to come and look for me? I remember the name of the place is Masca. I'm up in the hills around there. This isn't happening when it should be happening. Nothing to Mum, nothing to Dad, nothing to stepdad. And let us imagine that the mum's number, the dad's number, the stepdad's number is all not working. Other numbers are working, we know that. It's funny, isn't it? The numbers that are all in Tenerife, they're all working just fine. Whether it's video call, text message, regular phone call, WhatsApp, Snapchat, they're all working fine. But only in Tenerife, it seems that any number, mum, dad, stepdad, brother, nothing goes to Zach either. No mention to Zach. And not only that, none of his friends. He was so keen, Jay was so keen, it seems, to contact his WhatsApp group back in Lancashire, telling them all about the stolen watch. If that was Jay sending that message, we're told it is. Yeah, we're told that's him. That's him saying, bigging himself up, exaggerating the situation, letting the world know he'd stolen a watch. That we are told in the inquest that is Jay writing that. So at that point, in the car up to Masca, the whole telephone text connection over to Lancashire, the WhatsApp group, that's working just fine. 100%, no problem with that. Hour or two later, all of a sudden, no one in Lancashire gets a message from him. No one. No friends, no contacts, none of his group back in Accrington, Oswald, no one. The mum, the dad, the stepdad, the brother, no friends, none of them get a single message. Nothing, no one gets a thing in his hour of need. Only the small clique of people on the island of Tenerife. They, on the other hand, how many messages we get told? They get 70 100, I don't know, there's this whole flurry of communication. But it's strange to me that every single one of those communications happens to a small, tight group of people on Tenerife, and not one single message, nothing at all, goes out to where Jay is from, where his family are, to his world. It all suddenly becomes as if only within this tight Tenerife community can any contact be made. It doesn't make sense. The only explanation for me is that that's not Jay writing, and that's not Jay because he would surely spend a few seconds with one message going to someone back in Lancashire. I would have thought. It seems phenomenally unlikely that every single piece of communication during those few hours would only go to a very small group of people in Tenerife. To my mind, if this were all an accident. If it's not an accident and there's something else going on in the background, it makes perfect sense. If someone else were using that device, it makes perfect sense. But if this were all an accident and that's Jay on that phone, it makes no sense to me that not one single piece of communication goes through to anywhere but Tenerife. And then we have the phone not charged situation. That doesn't add up either. Again, we've got the mother saying, if anyone was, sure their phone was charged, it would be Jay. I would say everyone in the world is like that now. Isn't it the case that we all go out thinking, what about my phone? What is the charge? Am I going to bring a charger with me? What happens if I, find myself in a situation where I must use this phone? I think 90 odd percent of the population, and maybe 100% of the young population, when they go out with their phone, think, I've got to have a charged phone. I've got to have a means of charging it, or it's got to be charged enough to get me through the evening. Of course, life happens, shite happens, things go wrong, your phone goes dead. Yeah, I got it. But first time abroad, yeah, lad's holiday. You meet some dodgy Somalis and dodgy Angolans. I would think the level of concern to make sure that phone is charged goes up, not down. So again, Jay's phone not charged makes me think it's not Jay in charge of that phone. In fact, it makes me think there's someone in charge of that phone that wants the charge. Someone is in possession of that phone. They want the charge to go down. I said it just strikes me as the behavior of someone that wants to have that phone's charge go naturally down. That's why they're videoing and they're constantly using it, so that the charge is going down. And when it cuts off, then they'll discard the phone. But for whatever reason, they don't want to do it with the phone charge still there. It just seems to be that's what the person in charge of that phone wanted. Get it down to zero, have it cut off, and then we're done. For whatever reason. But some of you have spotted that in that car where Rocky is, to me, pretending to be asleep, it's quite visible there's a charger in that car. We've never had Rocky, we've never had Ayub, we've never had anyone explain why that charger in the car wasn't used on Jay's phone. Maybe that charger doesn't fit Jay's phone. I don't know. I'm not a phone person. But we've never had an explanation. We've had Ayub say that he told Jay to go into his friend's room and take the charger there. We've never had an explanation why that didn't work. So it seems like in order to believe that Jay's phone wasn't charged because he tried to charge it but it just didn't work, that the charger in the car wasn't right, and Rocky's charger wasn't right. So 2 out of 2 just didn't fit or didn't work. Oh, and we've got to believe that Jay didn't bring a charger with him. Again, I don't know how these young people work. I would have thought they all, especially if they have a man bag, stuff in a charger with them. Again, just in case. So those 3 things didn't happen. Jay didn't have a charger with him in his man bag. Jay couldn't charge his phone in the car. Jay couldn't charge his phone using Rocky's charger. And therefore, through the night, as he sees the level of battery going down, 5%, 4%, 3%, at the moment it's at 3%, he's still videoing the mountains outside Masca, thinking, this is fine. I've only got 3%. I've got no way of charging this phone, but I'll just take a video showing everyone what the mountains are like. No concern that this 3% is going to become 2%, is going to cut off. And he can't do anything at that point. Whether he's stumbling around a ravine or whether he's stuck in Masca, he knows that 3% is danger zone. What the hell is he doing showing the world he's having a cigarette and showing mountains when he's already found out he can't charge his phone? Rocky's doesn't work, the one in the car doesn't work, and he hasn't got one. This makes no sense. So, no phone calls or communications to family and friends in Lancashire tells me that ain't Jay on that phone. The phone not being charged and the battery just going down to the danger zone, and apparently Jay not really concerned about that, tells me it's not Jay. It speaks of someone else in charge of that phone. And then we have the no pic of Jay on his own phone. I do find that strange. I find that very strange. You would have thought from the moment Jay leaves Papagayos to the moment he disappears, there'd be a picture of him somewhere, or a video of him somewhere. The one that we think is the Photoshop pic of Jay in the back of the car, obviously that's not Jay taking his own photo. Yeah, that's Ayub taking that. Jay on the doorstep having a cigarette. Again, this could be anyone's hand, and conspicuous by its absence is nothing that says it's Jay, i.e. his face. What is it in that scenario? As he pans around from the car to the mountains to the hand with the cigarette in, what stops him then just showing his face and giving us a smile? Don't know. But he decides not to show his face. Nothing has been produced of evidence of Jay on the inside of the Airbnb. Pic of the Airbnb with him in the background, a selfie. There's nothing there. Now, we do have, apparently, Jay in Tramps, or wherever it is, dancing with the Henny bottle, filming himself. But someone else has filmed him filming himself. I'll say that again. That is someone else filming Jay filming himself. So as Jay is dancing around with the Henny bottle filming himself, where is that video of Jay filming himself? Not the one of someone filming Jay filming himself. Where is the actual video from Jay's phone of Jay filming himself? Why is that absent? I would have thought, given that we know Jay filmed himself dancing with a Henny bottle, logically we know that is on Jay's phone. We haven't seen that. You see, DCI Higson was in charge of going through forensically all the phone details, and I would just say conspicuous by its absence, there's no mention from her of any picture or any video or anything on Jay's phone that shows him. You might say she wasn't charged with telling us that, but I would have thought Adderley would have asked her, I'm just curious, DCI Higson, when you went through all of these texts and videos, did you actually see something on Jay's phone that showed Jay selfie filming himself, in particular this moment in Tramps when he's got a Henny bottle and someone we know is filming him? Did you see that on his phone? And I would suggest Adderley never asked that because he knew the answer was probably no, I didn't see that. And that's pretty darn strange because we know he filmed himself. I guess he filmed himself, didn't like it, and then he erased it. But then that would be traceable too. You'd see that, I would think, DCI Higson's a forensic phone expert, she would see that something was filmed and then deleted at that time in the timeline. But no, there is no picture of Jay on his own phone. That is, I would think, very strange. And then we got this heavy concentration of short texts and Snapchats. The Snapchat thing I kind of get. It just disappears. I mean, it's very convenient, isn't it? Jay's texting away and then it just disappears. But they use Snapchat, and that's how they do it. That's fine. I get that. But we do have this very heavy concentration on short text. What I'm saying is if someone else is using that phone, they are going to focus on short text. They're not going to say too much. Because if you're posing as another person, the more you blab, the more it comes across that you might not be that person. So keep it short, Keep it sweet, keep it neutral, keep it as something that anyone might say. Yeah. Yes, cuz. Yeah. Is that person when they're going, yes, cuz, are they thinking, is that something that Jay says? Yes, cuz. Let's start the message with yes, cuz, because I've heard him say that. Are they that smart? Or is that Jay actually typing that at that moment? Was that the last genuine Jay message? I don't know. But from what I recall from what DCI Hickson said, there is quite a lot of short text going on here. Boom, 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 boom. And it's the short, neutral kind of text that would fit what Jay says or what anyone says if you're trying to pretend to be that person. I mentioned it before, the phone, Jay's phone is not seen in his hand from Papagayos onwards. Yes, again, we have Jay dancing, filming himself with a Henny bottle in Traps. I'm still not convinced that's the same night, by the way. I think Wax is. I think a few others are, which is fine. I just hesitate. Because again, when you see what Jay was like in Papagayos, we're supposed to believe that same guy that looks to me is about to collapse. He is so open-mouthed and jaw down. He is so out of it. I find it hard to believe he had this miraculous recovery, like Lazarus rising from the grave, and then he's full of life again in Tramps, and he's even fuller of life in the back of that car up in Masca. It's a hell of a transformation. In my book, too much of a transformation for me to think it's all the same night. I've said this before. There's too much action, too much different stuff going on in that one night for me to believe it's all the same time period. And then we have Lucy. I've got a feeling that the person Jay might have trusted most with his phone was Lucy. I just think if Lucy said, I need to borrow your phone just for tonight, I've got a feeling Jay would say, okay. I don't think he would with Josh. With Brad, I don't know. Maybe not. Brandon, hell no. I don't know about you, but if Brandon said, can you just let me borrow your phone? I need it for a few transactions tonight. Brandon said, hell no. Not you, not your brothers, no one you know. Brad, I don't know. Lucy, if I were Jay, I'd probably say, yeah, okay, Lucy. Just saying, if it's Lucy that's in charge of that phone, it might be by consent. Might be. And then I come back to, I'll read this up now because it's a long one. Listen, I'm not going to make it. Listen, I'm not going to make it. Yeah, listen, I'm not going to make it. If you know you're not going to make it, if you know these are your last words to the world, no matter what your state of mind is, you're now focused on passing away. I really don't think, listen, I'm not going to make it, is going to be the message that goes to your drinking buddy back in Los Cristianos. I really think that is going to go to your mum, if you have to choose someone. And it doesn't take much juice. I know he's down to 1%, but it doesn't take much extra juice in that battery to add the word mum. Listen, I'm not going to make it, mum. Oh, no. One more time. Every condescending, lecturing, assuming prick out there, a la Chris Pennington and Sluggy and the Accident Group, that tells the world if you weren't searching up in that ravine area, you weren't helping. They don't know what they're talking about and they're trying to gaslight you. The truth is, only if you are 100% sure that Jay was up in that ravine somewhere, only if you were sure of that, and I don't see how you could be, given that Cipriano Martin said after 2 weeks we've got to think that the boy wasn't here, that he's gone somewhere else. Only if you're 100% sure would it be considered helpful to be searching up there. If, heavens above, someone like Chris Pennington, someone like Ivor Lovelace, someone like the Guardia Civil, if, for any reason, they concluded that Jay was up in that ravine and he never was, let's consider that possibility, that they all were convinced he was up there and he wasn't, because there's no evidence to say he was. then everything they did searching in that ravine was a total waste of time, and they were the ones not helping to find out where Jay actually went. So all of us that didn't believe Jay was in that ravine, we were actually helping by putting out suggestions of other places and other explanations of what could have happened to Jay and where he might be. If Jay were never in that ravine, everyone that decided they had to be searching in that ravine were wasting their time, were wasting our time, were wasting Jay's time, were wasting the family's time, and that's why the family kept saying, till they did a 180, we don't think he's here. So for the likes of Chris Pennington and El Sluptardo and Adrian and the Guardia Civil and all the rest of you that went blundering around that ravine so sure that Jay was up there, thanks so much for not helping anyone find anything that led to saving Jay Slater or finding out what happened to him. Thanks so much for not helping. Your lectures on what we did to try to help can be shoved up where the sun never shines. Got it? Hasta luego, adios, hasta la vista. See you next time.